see everything because I can't see them at all anymore. I can't even see me. Which I'm the lucky one, guys, because I can't see me. You guys still can. So I hope. Everybody still see?
Dennis says yep.
Okay. All right. Well, as we all know, we'll get started here, but turkey hunting's right around the corner for a lot of people. Some people it's actually started, down south, a couple places out west. One of my big passions is turkey hunting. A lot of reasons I like turkey hunting is because you can take new hunters, youth, a lot of different options and opportunities to get people out in the woods and hear the woods wake up in the morning. Usually the weather's nicer. It's a great introductory sport to hunting to get people involved. So with that said, though, I've been fortunate to have been doing this for over 40 years now. Started guiding when I was 10, actually before I could even hunt. It all started, my dad bought me a diaphragm call. I brought it home, choked, gagged, spit up a few times, and didn't sound very good or anything else. However, learned. And so then pretty soon people started asking my dad if they could take me to call for them because they didn't even know how to call, but they were drawing tags. So that's kind of how I got into this and the passion of this. So over 40 years, I've hunted a lot of different states. I've hunted, guided a lot of hunters, done a lot of bow hunting myself. Haven't shotgun hunted in a long time, but take a lot of shotgun hunters. But I get to see everything from youth season, early seasons in Florida, out west, all the way to the latest seasons here in Wisconsin. So I get to see how these turkeys react to everything and how people or not people, but how these turkeys are responding, not only to calls, but decoys, different things. So we're really going to break that down, try to do it as quick as we can, but break that down through the seasons, what to really look for beginning and prior to the seasons all the way up to, the breeding seasons of these turkeys. So with that said, we will jump into this. Again, these are companies that we partner with and work with. And so if you have any questions on any of those, you can ask me a little later. But right now, we are really concentrating on our turkeys. So the first thing is preseason preparation. Whether you're going to, hunt with archery equipment or whether you're going to hunt with your shotgun, in your scouting, what do you look for? But here we really want to talk about your target practice first. Archery shot placement, really look at these slides or this slide really well. A lot of times you're going to have to shoot them a little bit higher than what you think you have to because the vitals in a turkey are up higher than what you'd think because there's so much breast there. And so many people look like they've made a shot or feel like they've made a very good shot on that turkey and end up losing it because they just put an arrow through the breast of that turkey and then don't recover it. I would rather shoot them a little bit high and take that wing out or take their legs. So if you look at most of these shots, just about every one of them is right over the top of those legs or centered on those legs. You take their legs out, they don't have enough power to push and gain air. If they push off and they start flying, it's going to be really tough to find that bird. So really study the anatomy of that turkey when you're going out there and use the largest cut broadhead that you can. I helped years ago with new archery products in development of the Gobbler Getter Spitfire. We tried a lot of heads, tried a lot of different things, and now over the years we've just found out the bigger the better. So I look for that 2-inch, 2 3/8 inch, which is either the Spitfire Triple X, or I look for the Killzone Max, which then, looking at those, you're looking at either the 2-inch 3-blade or a 2 3/8 inch 2-blade. There's some other ones out there, I always get the question about shooting it in the head. Great, you can do that. It's either hit or miss, so you're either going to kill him or you're going to miss him. And, that's one thing. However, as much as I love to turkey hunt with a bow, and I've killed a boatload of turkeys with my bow, turkeys really were made to be shot in the face with a shotgun. They really were. And so to really do that, you need to pattern your shotguns. A lot of people don't, realize that patterning a shotgun is important. 2 years ago, I think it was, we took Michelle's, actually it's longer than that, but we finally figured it out with her shotgun, but she had a very nice turkey gun. And the problem was, when we put the chokes in this, depending on what shell it was, sometimes at 20 yards, she would only have 3 BBs in a 6-inch paper plate. And then you'd shoot a different shell and you'd have 25 or 30. Some of them would pattern high, some of them pattern low. So then you would, have to adjust that sight. So, get that target, put it out there, take 2 or 3 different shells, a 4-shot, a 5-shot, a 6-shot, or there's some out there that are, they call them duplexes, or I'm trying to think of the other one right now. There's another one, Federal, triple threat or triple something like that, and that's got 3 different size BBs in it. Go out and pattern those and try that, and it might be a choke, it might be the shotgun shell, but I remember, I looked at her because I know how good of a shot Michelle is, and I looked at her and I'm like, what are you doing? She looked at me and she's like, I'm not doing anything. And so, of course, I have to grab the shotgun to try to prove her wrong. And the same thing happened to me. And I had like 2 BBs in it. And needless to say, I got that look. And after I got that look, I should have trusted her in the first place because, I know how well she shoots. So I went out and got new shells, everything else, and things have, gotten a lot better since then. So with your archery stuff, the anatomy, a big broadhead, shotguns, pattern that gun at 20 yards, 30 yards, and 40 yards, and make sure that shell is patterning where you need it to pattern. Sometimes an extra full choke is actually too tight, and we'll condense that wad too much. And so then when it comes out of there, it's too tight and they just scatter. So sometimes you have to go back down to a full choke. Get out and try that. So we're going to move on to scouting, which a lot of people don't really think about scouting turkeys. And what really got me more into that was probably 15 years ago. There was a place that I hunted, and every year it was the same. I knew where the roost trees were. I knew what these birds were going to do. And so I didn't even go out there. The first morning of my season, I get out there. I go to sit down at my tree, and my tree's not there anymore. The property owner had it logged, and the trees weren't there. So all of a sudden, I'm out there, and the birds aren't there. The birds are over on the neighbors. So that really taught me, you know what, I should probably get out and do a little bit of scouting. Then I really looked at things and said, okay, what do I really need, not only for the location of where they're roosting, but what are they doing throughout the day? What fields are they in? Where are their strut zones? If you don't know what a strut zone is, when you look at it, if you're walking through the woods right now, and it looks like a scrape on the ground from deer, it might be a scrape. It's got a lot of deer tracks. But if you also look, you find another spot and it's got ends of turkey feathers or turkey feathers in it, and it kind of goes around in a circle, and it's got like knife marks, drag marks in it. That's his strut zone. That's where he's going to go to, and the hens figure out where that is and they come to him. In nature, we're trying to reverse that. We're trying to get him to come to us as a hen, where in reality, what happens is, and why sometimes they become so hard to hunt, is because the hens, go to them throughout, and we'll get into that a little later. So, look at where their locations in weather, what conditions, identify the stages, number of birds, hens versus males. Right now, they're starting to split up. We look at it and go, man, there's huge groups of hens and huge groups of males, and they're all on this farm right now. Well, that's the way it was. Now, all of a sudden, this warm weather, everything's happening. These birds are starting to split up and go back home. We had a really hard winter down here, so some of our birds probably ended up, 4 or 5 miles away on food sources that are finally making their way back into where they had to make their way. And so that's the first stage, is really getting back to their home ranges and figuring out where they were. So you have to identify that and where they're going to be, because, guys, a lot of people want to hunt. Well, there's 20 toms over here. That's where I want to go. Well, why do you want to go there? That's where they are now. But in a couple of weeks, when season comes in, they want to be where the hens are. So figure out where the hens are and where they're roosting, because that's where those toms are going to end up being here at some point in time, and probably very soon. So you want to look at using optics and looking from a distance, because back to, where are they at certain times? Early in the morning, you can spot them in trees, especially this time of year when there's no leaves on it. So using, optics from a long ways away, and checking fields when it's pouring down rain. A lot of birds love to go into the middle of fields when it's raining. And why you see that, you drive by and you see big flocks of turkeys out in the field, and then the next day it's sunny out and you see 2 or 3 out there. What happens is it's security in numbers. So those birds want to flock out to the middle of those fields. More eyes, they look bigger, they look better, and so it keeps those predators away from them. However, for us, that's fine. If we know that that's where they want to be, they make this really cool thing called a ground blind, portable blind right now that you can pop up in the middle of a field. Turkeys, I hate to say they're dumb. We always say, oh, they're the dumbest bird in the world. And I hear that at every seminar I give, or every time I'm somewhere, they're like, dumbest turkey ever. They're the dumbest animal ever. And I'm like, well, if that's the case, then, the state average in Wisconsin is 23% success ratio. So that means 77% of us as hunters are dumber than those turkeys, okay? And that's not a good statistic, guys. So figure out where they are and what they're doing. And so if we can get out there in the middle of that field with those ground blinds and be where they want to be, trust me, it makes life a lot easier. And the other reason to scout from a long distance is we don't want to bump them. There was a huge study done last year before everything set in. I had a meeting with the NWTF, and they showed the patterns and how turkeys were like deer. And the more pressure you put on them, the farther away they went. So you may hear them now, but as you keep trying to get in there, try to get in there when it's hunting season to kill them. But right now, if you're doing that, you might be pushing that bird to roost on your neighbors or somewhere else. So try to do it from as far a distance as you can. If you don't, and everything is really wooded or big fields, like this one, you can see this slide, scouting early season. Let me get back to this real quick. Scouting more of a early season as this comes up in your clover fields and your food plots, because as these change throughout the year, these turkeys are going to move. So when you go in and you till, I've got one field that is no good until usually the last 2 seasons here in Wisconsin. And why is because that's when we finally get into this area and till those fields up and get them planted. Well, when we do, that's where all the birds come, because that's where all the food is. You got bugs in there now. You have your clover fields are probably going to turn to some dandelions in them, or they'll be budding out at that particular time. So watch that, scout that area, and check that, especially, new corn coming up, different areas. They're going to come in there and they're going to pick those things for seeds, for bugs, for different things. Dandelion fields, as much as I hate dandelions, dandelion fields are incredible. They love to come in there and eat those seed heads right off tops of dandelions. So, and then there's these areas, this is where I was getting to, there's those areas where it's too wooded or you're too intrusive, where you don't want to go in there all the time. Just like I said with deer, you're pushing those out of there. So get in there and use your trail cameras. A lot of people use them for deer. I use them 24/7, 365. They're always out. Looking for deer that have shed, looking to see where deer go, what they do in the winter. You just learn that much more about animals. It's the same with turkeys. Using these for scouting, you put those on, use the video mode, especially if it has sound. That way you can listen, you can learn how these turkeys communicate, between gobbles or yelps or purrs or different things. They'll all come through on that. If they don't have that, you'll still be able to watch the video and understand what these birds are doing and look at what time of year it is. Is it pre-breeding? Are they just out there, still fighting, trying to find out who's boss? Are they actually breeding these hens, which you might be able to catch the breeding on camera, to give you those stages and what's happening with these turkeys at that, time frame and that moment, to give you a better opportunity of killing that. As I said, it's put yourself where that bird wants to be. It's so much easier than trying to call that bird to a different spot. And that's what this next frame comes into, is you look at it and the top right, with all those birds in that field. So the time frame is 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 3:30 in the afternoon. The other ones are 8 o'clock in the morning. One of them is, I think, 6:30 in the morning. I don't have my glasses on. I'm getting old. What you're looking for is, what are they really doing? The one on the left, that's his strut zone. Look at what time he's going to be there. What time are the birds going to be in your food plots? Turkeys do a circle, and it can be up to a 3-4 mile circle in a day. But what they're going to do is, when they land, they make a route. And the problem is, a lot of people don't understand that they make a route and go places. They go to food, water, cover. They go to different places they can hang out in the middle of the day that aren't so hot when it gets really hot. Then they've got to go back to that food, and then they have to find their roosting area again. So as that route goes, I learned real quick when I was guiding, put up cameras and figure out where these birds are, because if they're not on my property until 3 o'clock in the afternoon in one area, why do I want to hunt that area at 6:30 in the morning? I don't want to get up at 4 o'clock, be out there sitting up against a tree or sitting in a blind. And then what happens is you're tired by 10 o'clock in the morning, you leave, you go get breakfast, but then you got to go back to work, or you've got other things to do or whatever, or you're just plain tired and you don't go back out, and they're not there until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. That's what the trail cameras do. They tell you what time they are. The same with that strut zone. As it gets later into the year, that becomes way more important. Okay, and when we start breaking these seasons down, as that later season comes, that scouting on those strut zones, because as those turkeys get smaller and smaller and smaller, and he's had more, the hens are on nest more, and those toms are out there and they've been hunted and get smarter, they're going to find those strut zones more and hang out on those strut zones longer and longer for those hens to come to them. So scouting is a main, very important to do here and figure this out. And trail cameras, this is where they can be, your biggest helper that you have without being intrusive at all in killing turkeys. And like I said, back in the old days, I used to do this on different properties and knew where they were in the afternoon and the morning. So I would take clients out. They would kill one in the morning, and I would have somebody on standby. I would call them up and say, hey, we just killed one. let's go. And they would, jump in the car and we'd head out to a different area and hopefully kill another one in the afternoon if they were in the mood. So, again, watch this and pay attention to these, throughout the entire spring, no matter what season, because it'll help you be more successful in figuring out what those birds are doing. So now we're going to get into the fun part. We're going to get into the stages of the breeding season. And, I'm not going to cover a lot of calling here on any of this. And part of the reason, I'll talk about it a little bit, but part of the reason, there's just a couple calls that you really need to know, and that's a yelp, cluck, and a purr. And if you can get those down, just your you can get that down, and I don't have a call in, but a slate call is usually pretty easy to learn to do that. A box call on windy days is really good for that because they carry farther. If you can use a diaphragm call, great. If you can't, just keep trying because they are the most difficult to figure out. And those three are the biggest things. And don't worry, you don't have to sound, like a world champion caller. You don't have to sound the best in the world. I have heard some of the worst sounding hens ever. A few years ago, I was there and I actually got up to go see who was trespassing on one of my properties because it sounded so bad that I'm like, I guarantee you that that's somebody walking through the woods calling. I got up, walked over there, and I busted a hen, and she had a tom with her, and they went flying out of there. I learned that lesson real quick, that they can sound really, really bad also. So it doesn't matter, guys. You don't have to be perfect at it, okay? It's more about the cadence, the tempo, and just learning those three calls and not over calling, okay? So the stages of breeding season, what we're looking at is a pre-breeding, breeding, and post-breeding. And again, their behaviors change a lot over this 6 to 8 week period. They're a lot like deer. So if you guys really like to hunt deer, they're as far as looking at pre-rut, rut, and post-rut, what they do and how they act is very similar. It's just that usually the turkeys have more hens than toms, and there's more, jakes or 2-year-olds running around. So you need to shift your tactics. You need to look at that 6 to 8 weeks and shift not only your calling, decoy use, setups, different things. And that's what we're really going to touch on now throughout this to help you be successful, this year and in coming years. And if you're not successful this year, hey, just go back out and try it next year. It's sometimes it takes a few years, but once you get the hang of it and figure it out, it can be a lot of fun. So hang on here. I blew by one for some reason. Okay, now we're good. I think my wife did that on hers. I'll blame her. So stage 1 is the pre-breeding, and this is, it's actually starting right now. This year in Wisconsin, seasons are super late. And I went to the biologist. I asked them why. Part of it is the numbers of turkeys over the last couple of years has dwindled some in the state of Wisconsin. Part of it is just not really overkill by hunters, but a lot of it has been because we've had really wet, miserable springs, and that's really hard on nesting hens. So they've moved this back. They've moved our seasons back to try to get through part of that breeding and that early breeding seasons to not put the pressure on them to get better broods and bigger hatches. So it is late, but a lot of these things are still going to be the same, what you want to look at and how they behave throughout this. So even though it's early this year, we're still going to catch towards the end of this, in that first season, going into that second season, you're still going to end up with this breaking up into groups by age. And at this time, usually the youth season, first and second season, whether it's here in the Midwest right now, especially out west because it's still early and you've got a lot of groups of these 2-year-olds. 2-year-olds are easier to kill. And why they're easier to kill is they haven't really found their way. All the Jakes are in a group. They're just they don't know what they're doing at all yet. So they get in this big group trying to figure it out. The 2-year-olds want to become breeders. So they want to get in on some of the action. But however, your 3, 4, and 5-year-old birds are the ones that already have got their hens. They're off. They're your breeders. They're your main breeders. So they've already separated, pushed their hens in their group. So now you've got these groups, 2, 3, 4, sometimes 6, 7, 2-year-olds together, and they really don't know what's going on. So you make a few calls, and they're like, "Woohoo! We've got our own hen to us," and they take off, and they're coming as fast as they can to try to figure out where you are. And usually you'll recognize these groups. Some of them are all in strut all together, but as you get a little bit later through that first and second weeks of season, now all of a sudden you'll get one strutter, and the other ones won't be strutting anymore. They'll just be half strut or half puffed out. That's because they've gone through that dominance phase. This is a big dominance phase, what's going on during this pre-breeding. And they're trying to figure out who is the most dominant, especially in those 2-year-olds. And that's why you'll see that one coming in there in full strut and the others in half strut. That means they've been through that fight and he is the dominant. And like I said, your older birds now, they're going to be in that smaller group or solo, that solo tom, looking for those other groups of hens. And so they're so dominant during this time in this dominance that what happens is, if you guys want to have some fun with this, and sometimes it's hard. I know you're kind of interactive here, but usually when I'm in a big group with a bunch of people, it's easier with this question. But how many guys have really been out there and hunted, and all of a sudden that one tom comes in and he's in full strut, and there's 3 or 4 others that are half strut. I always tell the young hunter or my hunters to shoot that one in strut and sit tight, because after you do, you're going to see an incredible show, because all those other birds are going to then try to become dominant, and they think, wow, you know what? Frank just fell over a heart attack, so now we're going to beat up Frank, and we are now going to be the bosses. And now they got to figure out who the boss is, so they're all going to pound on this thing forever. And I've actually had it to the point, Scotty, Eric, had a friend of ours, Eric, out, and we had this happen one year. I told Eric, and Eric is in a wheelchair, so he wasn't going to go piling out of the blind like I usually do anyway to get to these birds. And I said, you know what, Eric, shoot this turkey. So he shoots this thing, it drops. There's 3 other toms with it. They come over and they just start beating this thing. I mean, there's feathers flying and there's everything else, and they're pecking this dead bird on the ground, dragging it around in circles. And Eric's like, this is really cool. And after literally 5 minutes, he's like, you probably should go out there. I'm not going to have anything left of my turkey. So I went out there, and these birds, the dominance phase at this time is so intense that I literally walked up within 3 yards of these birds before they even realized that I was there, and then had to yell at them to scare them away. They ran out probably 10 yards and turned around to come running back when I went to pick that bird up, and he flopped. And then I had to yell at him to scare him away. So that is the dominance phase at this time. So now what you need to do, because of that dominance phase, is shift your hunting tactics during this pre-breeding. And what I'm saying by that is, look at what decoys you're using. A lot of times guys use a full strut decoy at this time of year. And I'm not saying they don't work, because they do on the right birds. However, for the best success, what I like to do is, if you see that half strut in this photo here, I like that half strut, because what's happening is he is showing that if they can't tell that that's a Jake, then all of a sudden these 2-year-olds look at it and go, well, I'm the dominant bird. He does not feel like he's the dominant bird because he will not go into strut. So he is only half strut, just puffing up. So he all of a sudden says to himself, I no longer feel intimidated, so I'm going to run in there and I'm going to beat this bird up because of that dominance phase. So I like using that half strut at this time of year with my hens. I will then take a hen that is usually a feeding hen, for one, because that shows relaxation. A lot of times what happens is that all the old decoys used to be these upright hens where their head kind of like the one in the decoy or in the picture, which still isn't quite as high, but their body was even more straight up. The head was more straight up, which shows some type of fear in that bird. And so then that hen showed relaxation, which helped that. Now you get into these birds and you can get into this breeding bird or a sitting hen, relaxed hen, kind of like the one there. You want that normal looking hen with that tom or that Jake. Early at this phase, I like to set him about 2 to 3 yards behind her, for the simple fact that it doesn't look like, he's still a little timid to do what he has to do. That gives room for that other tom, that 2-year-old, to come in and go face to face. They like to go face to face. So what I like to do is, if you're shooting a bow, either have that so it's sideways to you or facing you. If I'm using a shotgun, I like it sideways to me, because what he wants to do is come in, and he doesn't want to approach that thing from the back. He's going to circle around and go face to face. It's kind of like two guys in a bar fight. They're going to walk in there and they're going to puff their chest up and go chest to chest. That's what these want to do. The hen, I want her facing me, because what he's going to do then is try to split them, go face to face with him, and then turn to her to try to mount her, and that gives you that head-on shot. That gives you that perfect shot. So, we have any questions over there yet?
No, we just have one person who's having trouble with audio, so he's been trying different.
Okay. So the again, use that hen then. Feeding hen is relaxed. I really like that. During this phase, I get a lot less aggressive. I'm a little bit softer with my calling. And the reason being is because there's so many hens out there. So what happens is, because there's not as many hens nesting yet, and you'll hear this, if you're out there a lot right now, you'll hear the hens over here roosted and you'll hear the toms over here. And there's a distance between them. If you can sneak in between them, great. But if not, what happens is, if you're close enough, you may kill it right off the roost. But a lot of times you're going to kill that, midday or later morning bird, that 9 o'clock bird, during this time frame. And that reason is because there's so many hens. If you guys have turkey hunted before, you'll hear it. All of a sudden, you'll hear that bird gobbling, and then pretty soon you sound like the only hen out there. You're real soft, doing some tree yelps, and he gobbles at you back and forth, and then all of a sudden you hear this. Where'd she come from? And then pretty soon she gets louder. She's the boss hen. Well, what happens is, because he's gobbling and now you started, if you try to get too aggressive, she's going to pitch down. She walks right to his tree. And you probably had this happen. He gobbles a whole bunch of times, and then he sounds like he's getting fired up at you. And he's really not. He's getting fired up because if she's quiet now and you don't hear her anymore, she's on the ground walking to him. And he's getting really excited about that. He sees her. He pitches down, hits the ground. You'll hear him gobble 3 or 4 times. You call, he gobbles at you. The next time he goes quiet, you get excited. The next time he gobbles, he's 200 yards away walking away. Guys, it's nothing we did. It's just that it's that time of the year, and it is kind of what we did. We got too aggressive. So then at that time, you just back off and let it ride out. Let him go with those hens. Let him do what he's doing, because by 9 o'clock in the morning, what hens are ready are going to be bred and done, and he's going to be looking for new hens. And there's so many of them that he doesn't know which way they went. So then you start up again, and if he gobbles and answers you, usually that 9, 10 o'clock bird, if he's answering you, he's probably coming if you don't get too aggressive with him. And let him come in and do what you have to do. So be a little less aggressive right away in the morning, maybe a little bit more aggressive later in the morning, but early, do that early, be less aggressive. Otherwise, you're just going to push him away. You're going to get that boss hen fired up, and she's going to take him away on you. So then we're going to move into, anybody got any questions on first stage? I'll give you a second to. Anything?
Nothing coming in chat.
All right, nothing. So we'll go to stage 2 into the breeding season then. Now we get into that peak breeding. Now what I like to call this is the jealousy stage. All right, this is because the first stage, most of these toms have already figured out who's who, but now you've got a lot of your 2-year-olds that have been killed. So now you've got, your fighters and stuff that are still left. So now your job is to make them jealous, because their behavior completely changes. Now you've got these single toms with hens. Your big groups of males, unless they're jakes, aren't happening anymore. You might have a few toms here and there, or 2-year-olds, but most of those are either killed or they've already split because they beat each other up and they're not friends anymore. And as it gets closer, you'll start hearing those toms and those hens, and they start getting closer and closer and closer as they roost, because there's more and more of those hens are on nest. And as they're on nest, these toms know, because everything goes off of daylight. Everybody thinks, hey, you know what? The weather's really warm. They get these warm spells in February here. I saw a tom strutting, heard a tom gobbling. You know what? They are just like us as guys. All right, 24/7, 365, it's on their mind, but it's all regulated by the hens. It's all regulated by Mother Nature. When the length of day hits a certain time frame, that's what triggers that hen to start saying, okay, I'm getting closer and closer to breeding season and ready to be bred. And that's what happens with that length of day. So as that length of day gets to that point, now you're past that, and they know that length of day and that time is starting to run out a little bit. So again, they start roosting closer and closer as those hens are on nests and those last ones are still there. Now they're going to start hitting that strut zone a little more often, because now they don't have as many hens. They don't have as many running to them. So now you have to start back to that scouting. Where were those strut zones? What time of day? A lot of these, you'll only see them there once, maybe twice a day on these strut zones during this time frame. But if you know what time, that's when you want to be there to hunt those. Okay. So start looking at that and bringing that scouting together on where is that and what time of day. Because right away in the morning, it gets tougher and tougher to kill them because they're getting closer to that. However, because there's not as many hens to be bred, they may pitch off a roost, go do their breeding, and be done by 7:30, 8 o'clock instead of 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock in the morning. But then by noon, things are really going to start picking back up again. And then just before, roost time at night, they'll start hitting again. Hit that strut zone again, and look at where they're going and how they're making that loop during that time frame. Because this time frame, again, they're going to get really jealous. They're going to get jealous pretty quick if you can convince them that you are a hen at this time, also a tom. I will throw in some gobbles at this time, but you have to be really careful, guys. I like gobbling at this time. especially, mid-morning, right away in the morning, not so much, but mid-morning, mid-afternoon, I'll throw out those calls as a hen, and then I'll hit them with a gobble right afterwards. A lot of times you'll get that other bird to shot gobble, and he's going to go, whoa, wait a minute. I ran that loop a little while ago, and there wasn't anybody else. Why is he there? Now you work on that jealousy part. But be careful, especially if you're on public. Had a guy I know last year tried doing some turkey reaping on public, and he heard some hens, and so he decided to start gobbling. So the other hunter gobbled back at him. He came up over the hill with the fan in his face. The guy shot him right in the face. He lived, but I think he took 21 BBs to the face. So it's very effective to gobble, but if you're on private land, that's one thing. But if it's public land, be careful. And if you hear somebody or you see another hunter, guys, blow the whole hunt. It's well worth it. And don't just wave your hand, because that looks like that white and blue head of a turkey. If you take your glove off, wave your hand, go, hey, I'm over here, real cautiously. No, just say, hey, you know what? There's another hunter over here. I'm not a turkey. So just kind of blow that hunt, but it can be very effective during this part of the year. So as you get, though, into that, now, as I said, you're looking at that breeding, you're looking at that jealousy. So what are we going to do? Now we have to change our whole hunting tactics again, right? First part of the season, I said, let's kind of lay back, not quite as aggressive, lay off on the, I don't want those full strutters. Now all of a sudden you get into this. We're into that jealousy. So if you don't want to spend a lot of money and you just want that one half strut Jake, that's fine. What you do with that then is you take that breeding hen or hot hen, and what I will do is I will put her here, and then I will take that half strut Jake and I'll put him right on top of her. It looks like he's breeding her to really get that jealousy going. Otherwise, right behind that hot hen or the breeding hen, I will take a full strut and put it that yard behind it, like it's coming in, to breed it. I've had a lot of luck with just that Jake, and so I didn't have to buy. I've got the full struts too, but the Jake is easier to get in and out. So then I put that Jake right on top of that hen, and I've got film footage of birds coming in, and they see that. In the last 20 yards, I've actually videotaped them running on a dead run, take off 10 yards away from that Jake, go airborne and knock that Jake right off her back and jump on him and beat the ever-living daylights out of him. And so that's what you need to focus on that. So get that Jake on top for that Tom really close. That breeding hen, if it has a stake, take the stake out and set it flat on the ground. Put it on the ground, then put him on top of it. And again, always that feeding hen. So if you have that feeding hen, put her out just so it shows that little bit of relaxation that there's one hen out there. Nobody's nervous about anything. Nobody's seeing anything funky. There's no predators in the area. So, and get more aggressive. Because there's less hens now, because they're on the ground, make sure that that bird knows you're there. So in the morning, if there's a hen that's yapping at you on roost, crank on her. Crank back as hard as you can at her. Try to get her jealous, because a lot of times at this time, what'll happen is she's just as jealous as he is. She'll come in to run you off because she's like, I don't want you in my territory. And he will follow her in. Okay, so this time frame, get pretty aggressive right away in the morning. And then if nothing's happening, about every 20 minutes, 25 minutes, let out a few calls, and every second or third one, let out quite a few and get pretty aggressive with them, and then back off a little bit, because a lot of times those birds will start coming in quiet. The next stage even gets worse, but this stage, that middle of the day, sometimes they'll come in quiet, but you'll get them if you get him to light up in the middle of the day, between 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock during this stage will be your best time to kill a good turkey. Okay. Right away off the roost is a good time, that 10 to 2, and then again just before going to roost. They're the 3 time frames during this that I'd hunt, but again, really focus on that jealousy part of it. Then we're going to get into, your last stage here, which is the post-breeding. This gets a little tricky, and a lot of guys don't like to hunt this. I actually, this last weekend, was talking to my buddy Eddie Salter, and if any of you guys are turkey hunters, you know who Eddie Salter is. And Eddie says, he says, what do you think about me coming up and hunting with you 5th or 6th season? He says, what do you think? How are the birds at that time? I said, well, yeah, you know how it works, Eddie. I mean, a lot of guys don't like to hunt that. He goes, nope, we kill some of the best birds we ever kill, right? And I said, exactly. I said, we'll kill some of the biggest birds we've ever killed late like that. And the reason that you kill some of those older birds and those best birds are because now what's happening is your hens, there's fewer hens. Most of them are on their nest. So these birds are really looking. They're out looking, and they're trying really hard because the daylight is got to that point where it's like, you know what? Here shortly, breeding season is going to be done, and they know that. Mother Nature has that into their heads that it's getting close, things are going to be done. So we really need to find those last hens. We need to find the ones that are unbred and get to them. So there's a lot less of them. Most of them are on nest. Those older birds, they're still looking for those unbred hens. But you've also got big groups of jakes. This is the only thing that throws a wrench into this thing. And that's why these old birds get quiet. And a lot of people don't like to hunt these last seasons or last couple weeks because there's not as much gobbling. They're past the gobbling peak. Plus, they're not as vocal, and that's what we're out there for. We like to have that vocalization, that interaction with that bird. Couple reasons that they aren't. One, because these big groups of jakes, all these jakes get back together, and now they think they're big and tough because all those 2-year-olds are either dead or they're singled out too, and so these big groups of jakes were split up earlier because those 2-year-olds were beating them up. Now they're not there anymore. All these jakes come back together and they gang up on what's left over, the 2, 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. And I've watched them come in and run these, I watched this old Tom with 4 or 5 hens, and he gobbles a couple times, and out of nowhere, here comes 5 or 6 jakes running down and just beat the ever-living daylights out and run him out forever. And so that's why these birds get quiet. However, these birds are some of the best birds that you can kill as far as what we as turkey hunters, freak turkey hunters like myself, are like Boone and Crockett turkeys. Years ago, I had a gentleman from Illinois come up and hunted with me. And we went out and middle of the day, got this bird. He gobbled once. That was it. Next thing, all you hear is walking next to the blind. And I'm like, here he comes. Bird walks out. He shoots this thing, walks out, picks it up, and he goes, isn't a very big turkey. When he picked it up, I could see the spurs, and I almost fell over. I'm like, do you know what you just killed? He's like, yeah, a pretty light turkey. I'm like, no, dude, you killed like a Boone and Crockett turkey. He's like, no, it's not very heavy. Well, a lot of the early season birds are heavy because they're not breeding. They're not running around breeding. They've ate all winter. They're, 2-year-olds that don't have that chance. So they're just still in groups, not burning that off. These old breeder birds have been since day one running for 2 months now. And so they've lost all this weight. And they're killing these 17, 18-pound birds going, well, he's not very heavy, and they've got these 1.5 and 1.75 hooks or better. that is like, that's a 5-year-old, 4 or 5-year-old giant turkey, and what we're looking at. And so I looked at that and he's like, really? And I'm like, but that thing is just ridiculous. It had big double beards, 10 and a half and 11-inch beard. And, but he just couldn't get over the weight. He's like, but it's only like 17, 18 pounds. I'm like, dude, I don't care. This thing is a giant, So these are the birds you have the opportunities to do, but you have to be a lot more patient. So when you get into that end of things, you really need to look in this post-breeding, and really this is a huge difference in what you're going to do with your hunting tactics, okay? You're going to take your decoys, get rid of your Jake altogether. Get rid of your toms, get rid of all that stuff, because they don't want confrontation anymore. They're looking for those last hens. That's it. They don't want to fight. They're going to be quiet, and this is where it's hard, is because they're so quiet. They come in silent because they're looking to see if there's any toms with them. If there are, I've seen birds come in, see that decoy, and turn around and sneak right back out the way they came. That's why they're coming in quiet. They're looking for that last hen. Okay, so as that last hen comes in, or that hot hen, put just the hot hen out. Put a feeding hen out for that relaxation, and use your calls sparingly. It depends on the bird. If he's answering and cranking, crank on him. But most of the time, it's real soft calling every 15, 20 minutes, and just sit tight, because those birds will come in as quiet as they can be, and all of a sudden you may hear just a, and that's it. They won't gobble. They won't do anything that late season, especially in that midday. In the evenings, late afternoon on those plowed fields are a great time to kill them. In the mornings, they've probably been hunted so hard that they're pretty skittish. You can still do it, but a lot of times you're going to overcall right away in the morning. So try not to do that. Be very quiet and very sparingly in the morning. Gobbling, I don't, avoid it. Excessive gobbling, avoid gobbling altogether if you can in that late season, because they don't want that confrontation. So, switch these things up. They're your 3 stages. They're your 3 breeding season stages. Again, look at everything from start to finish, how you're going to do that. Look at your scouting, look at trail cameras, look at where those birds are going to go throughout the day, and then put these stages into effect and how you're going to hunt those, okay? Here's just a couple of photos, success photos. This turkey, this was a midday turkey, as you can see by the sun. We had a lot of birds out that morning. This bird comes in, and she seems to be the lucky one to kill these things. This one got 3 or 4 beards. The wings are all white on it. She's got a full body mount of it. It's got either 3 or 4 beards. Pretty nice hooks on it. She killed one a couple years ago that had like 4 beards and ginormous hooks on it. And she seems to kill the Boone and Crockett turkeys for some reason. I can't say a whole lot. I've been fortunate enough to, I think it was 2 years ago at our turkey banquet, I shot one that morning with my bow. And so our head of the state comes in and he says, well, let's score that thing up, measure just for the fun of it. And he looks at me and he goes, do you understand that this is like the new state record with the bow? And I said, it is? And he says, yeah. He says, why you look surprised? I said, because the one I shot last year actually scored more than this one did, but I've never put one in the books. And I guess maybe I should think about it. But it's a little bit different with a bow because there are not quite as many in there, so it wouldn't quite rank as high as the shotgun. But I've been fortunate enough to kill a few good ones that way. This one here, this was an early morning bird, came in. It's a 2-year-old bird. He came in with, I believe, 5 other toms at that point in time. So anyway, with that, kind of
We can also try to open it up to questions for audio.
wrap that up. If you guys have questions, give you a couple seconds here, a couple minutes, to ask some. I've got another one next Tuesday on using trail cameras to your advantage throughout, all your hunting through, doesn't matter what it is. If you're going to hunt deer, turkeys, bobcats, doesn't matter. How to really take care of those cameras and use those to your advantage to make them work in your advantage. And then on the 13th, the right optics for your purpose. So I'm going to kind of go through different rifle scopes, different rangefinders, and different binoculars and optics for not only the Midwest but out west, and how to use those or where to use those, and what'll fit you the best for your needs. So again, with that, and then Michelle's putting names into hat. We've got some drawings here for a few prizes.
They should all be able to ask questions out loud
if you've got questions, you should be able. Michelle says you should be able to ask questions out loud. So anybody have anything for me? Or did they all leave?
No, they're there. Jason Mueller, does a high-end decoy make a difference in your opinion?
Ooh, that's a good question, Jason. I believe it does. When you're going to get into either your breeding hen or into your jakes. So HS came out with a really high end for a very reasonable amount of money. They have the whole flock, which they did a very nice job. We've had some very, very good luck with that. I've also, you get into, Callie Morris. He does all the mounted ones.
Had him come running on that one.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the other gentleman out of La Crosse. Jeff.
Jeff.
Yeah, I mean Jeff. I can't think of his last name right now. I've done a lot of photo work for him, but he also does the same with, by mounting them, and it does make a difference. And the reason it does is when you get into the higher ends, whether it's a higher end HSs, whether it's I can't think of the names of them right now. I've got them all in my garage too, which is funny. But what happens is the paint job on those, the reflectiveness of the paint job, it makes it look more realistic. It gives it that sheen, and it needs that sheen when those birds turn from side to side and look at that different. Jeff Frederick. So then it looks like it gives that depth to the feathers too. And so I believe that as you get higher in that, a lot of it isn't the shape, but a lot of it becomes the paint jobs on those. And so, yes, I do believe that it does make a difference to a certain point in those, yes.
William Mullins asks, what broadheads are you using for turkey?
I use...
Largest cutting
Yes,
diameter.
I use the largest cutting diameter as possible. I use the Spitfire Max with 2-inch cut, XXX, and then I also use the Killzone 2 3/8 inch cut. I do like the 3-blade broadhead, however, just because it gives me more of an option or a better cutting surface if something goes, however that arrow goes into that animal. But that 3-blade Spitfire, I really like that. Anything 2 inches to that 2.5-inch cut is usually where I like to stay, is somewhere in that range.
All right, do you want to draw?
All right, we're going to draw here for these 3.
This is the first.
The first one, I don't know if, can they still see me? So the first one is going to be For the cookie cutter, the new HS, we came out with this last year. You can actually take this top off and run it as a regular slate. If you're new to the game, it has the area tells you where to yelp, purr, and to cluck. So then you can pop this off once you learn how to do it. But this is kind of helping you get that down, and then also a diaphragm call here. So. And Denny, you last year lucky, and you started out lucky again this year. Now you just need to kill that bird with them big old hooks on it. So, Denny Beskow.
Put that stick on there.
Then.
What do you want to draw next? This turkey or this or?
Yeah.
Or this because it's more.
No. And then this we've got a hat and also some shoot and see targets for you to pattern that in. It has 6 self-adhesive targets, so you can use this to pattern that in the hat, and that's going to go to Richard Wood. So get that, and then we have the last one is more for deer hunting too. If you guys do that, it is a scrape stick, and that one is going to go to Jason Mueller. So with that, guys, I appreciate all of you. I think we need to get addresses for the three winners. If you wanted to email us and go from there. If you've got any other questions that you think of while you're there, you can send them to me. It's art@helinOutdoors.com. That's my email. Shoot me an email if you think anything, and hopefully we recorded this, so hopefully here within a week we can get this up on our YouTube page so you can rewatch this. Hopefully you can put a piece of tape over me because I got a face for radio, but I appreciate you guys sticking with me tonight, and hopefully I will see you next Tuesday on the trail cameras, and that again will cover turkeys and deer and pretty much anything that you want to see and how to use those to your advantage, and the difference really between your straight trail cameras and now all your new cellular cameras, and advantages and disadvantages to all those. So hope to see you next week. Thank you. I appreciate it, guys.